All right, let's just dive right in. Back in the 1950s, a pretty remarkable guy, an artist, an architect, a philosopher named Walter Russell, he published this document called A New Concept of the Universe. And look, this wasn't just some new theory. It was a total, radical reimagining of, well, everything, from God and light to matter and energy. So in this explainer, we're going to try to unpack the core ideas of Walter Russell's really strange and, fascinating cosmos. You gotta understand, Russell didn't see his work as just a small correction to science. Not at all. He saw it as this monumental revelation. He truly believed this new knowledge was so revolutionary, it would make entire systems of thought completely obsolete and kick off a brand new age for humanity. Okay, so to really build Russell's universe from the ground up, we first have to get our heads around what he thought modern science got completely, fundamentally wrong. He wasn't just tweaking the details, He was really trying to tear down the very foundations of 20th century physics. Think about it this way. Mainstream thermodynamics, both then and now, kind of suggests the universe is on a one-way street, right? It's expanding, it's cooling down, and it's heading toward this eventual heat, death. Russell called that a totally unbalanced, one-way idea. He proposed something completely different, a perfectly balanced two-way universe. It's like a cosmic heartbeat that's eternally creating and dissolving, generating and radiating, with absolutely no beginning and no end. He laid out what he saw as science's biggest mistakes. First off, shutting out the creator, who he actually believed was provable in a lab. Second, the whole concept of electromagnetism. Russell argued that electricity is the only force, period. He also challenged the idea that energy is in matter. He said, nope, energy belongs to the creator and matter just expresses it. And maybe the biggest one of all, he totally rejected that matter is a substance. For Russell, it was just motion, nothing but motion. So, with those conventional ideas kind of pushed to the side, we can start to build Russell's universe from scratch. And his starting point? Well, it isn't a big bang or some kind of singularity. It's what he simply calls the creator. Now, Russell's creator isn't some being up in the clouds. It's the invisible, motionless, magnetic light that acts as the fulcrum for the entire universe. It's a state of perfect stillness, absolute rest. And he argued this wasn't about faith. He believed it was a provable, physical principle that controls everything, but doesn't do any of the actual work itself. So here's the big question, right? If the creator is motionless, where does this whole universe of motion and action come from? Russell's answer is kind of wild. Thinking. He proposed that the mind's thinking is electric. The desire to create something generates electric thought waves, and it's these waves of motion that actually form the entire physical universe. The cosmos is, quite literally, a thought form. And this brings us to the engine of creation in his model, polarity. How do you get a universe full of motion out of a universe of perfect stillness? Well, polarity is the principle that divides that unified one into pairs of opposites. You've got compression and expansion, positive and negative, male and female. These two opposing forces are always pushing away from each other, and that creates the tension that is motion. This whole division into opposites creates this perpetual cosmic pump. On one side, you have compression, which Russell just calls gravity. It winds up light waves into these little vortices, creating heat and generating matter. And on the other side, you have expansion, or radiation. It unwinds those same vortices, creating cold and dissolving matter back into space. One half is the life cycle, the other half is the death cycle, and they're always in perfect balance. Now, this two-way thinking leads to a direct collision with what we're all taught in school. The Coulomb law says opposites attract. Russell says, no way, that's just a sensory deception. Opposites, he argues, are the very definition of opposition. Their whole job is to push away from each other. He claimed that like conditions always seek out other like conditions. So a dense apple falls toward the dense earth, and when that apple decays into a gas, it rises to seek the low-density atmosphere. This brings us to what is maybe his most mind-bending idea of all. If the universe is just balanced, opposing pressures, then what is all this solid stuff that we touch and see every day? Well, according to Russell, it's pretty much an illusion. He says, point blank, that the universe has no substance. What we perceive as a solid rock or a piece of steel is just an effect of really fast-moving, short waves of motion that are creating a high-pressure condition. As he put it, if a cobweb could move fast enough, it would simulate a solid steel disc, and it could cut through steel. It's all about the motion, not the substance.
So if matter is really just motion, what does an atom even look like? On the left, you see the familiar model, right? But Russell's model on the right, it's a whole different ballgame. He saw every atom, every planet, every galaxy as a gyroscopic system. It's a spiral vortex, like a whirlpool of motion, winding itself inward towards a central nucleus or hub, and then unwinding itself back outward.
This gyroscopic model completely changes how we think about the elements. In Russell's universe, the elements are not 92 different substances. No, they're just different stages of growth within something he called an octave wave. Think of it just like a human life. Lithium isn't a different thing from beryllium. It's just an earlier, infant stage of the exact same process of motion, which is just growing up. And that maturity? It's reached at carbon. For Russell, carbon is the goal of the whole wave. It's the one point where the gyroscopic motion achieves perfect balance and forms a true sphere. It represents the point of maximum gravitational compression. It has the highest melting point, and it's the most stable form before the whole cycle begins its radioactive, unwinding journey back to zero. So, you might be asking yourself, what is the point of all this, right? It's a pretty radical cosmology. Why does any of it matter? Well, for Russell, understanding these universal laws, it wasn't just some academic exercise. It was the key to unlocking an absolutely unimaginable power for all of humanity. And the promises he made were staggering. Just listen to these. By understanding the gyroscopic nature of the elements, he claimed we could learn to transmute them whenever we wanted. That meant unlimited free hydrogen fuel, just taken directly from the atmosphere. It meant creating new supermetals. It meant making any nation's defenses so powerful that war would become completely obsolete. For him, this knowledge was literally the blueprint for a utopia. Ultimately, Russell really saw his work as the bridge between the spiritual and the scientific. He believed that humanity was standing at a crossroads. We could either embrace this unified understanding of the Creator's balanced, lawful universe and enter a new age of peace, or we could just ignore it and, through our own ignorance, destroy ourselves. Now, Walter Russell's ideas were, and they still are, way outside the scientific mainstream. But they do present this vision of the cosmos that's incredibly elegant, it's holistic, and it's deeply ordered. So it leaves us with a question. Was he a forgotten visionary who somehow glimpsed a deeper reality? Or was this all the product of a fantastic delusion? Either way, his work forces us to ask, what if the fundamental nature of our universe is just far stranger than we currently imagine?